Hey guys, Happy New Year and welcome back to Longevity with Natalie Nidham. It is so great to have you guys here today. It is the very beginning of the year. If you're listening to this episode, the day that it drops. And here we are launching into 2025. Can you even believe it? Crazy. Anyway, thanking you guys for being here, of course, and would love to invite you to visit natnidham.com, sign up for the newsletter, maybe think about joining the membership community. We've got incredible stuff planned for this year. We're going to grow and add features and add content. It's going to be amazing. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please make sure to leave us a review on whatever platform you are listening on, because that is how we rise up the ranks and reach more people. And before we jump in, we're going to talk a little bit about the episode, and then that's it. And then we're just going to jump in. So probably most of you or some of you have heard of GLP-1 medications like semaglutide, which is Ozempic, and tirzepatide, which is Mounjaro. But do they really work for lasting weight loss? That's been the discussion, right? So my guest today, Dr. Gus Vickery, is here to explain how these medications can support your weight loss goals and also why they should never be seen as a quick fix. We chat about the mindset shift needed to make lasting change, how to incorporate GLP-1 meds into your routine to build healthier habits and muscle, and why focusing on nutrient sufficiency, not just cutting calories, is the ultimate key to long-term success. Oh, and if you're worried about losing muscle or regaining weight once you stop the meds, Dr. Vickery has some great strategies to help you avoid that too. So this is a re-release. We released this episode last summer in 2024, and it was so popular that we decided we would kick the year off just to set the tone for 2025 for those of you who are embarking on a new body composition or body awareness journey. So let's jump in and make sure you check the show notes for Dr. Vickery's contact information. Hey folks, just a quick reminder that all of the information presented in this podcast is for information purposes only. No medical advice, no diagnosing, no treatments suggested here. Before you try anything that you hear about or learn about here, make sure that you check with your medical provider. Hey, Dr. Gus Vickery, it is a pleasure to have you back.
Natalie, it's always a joy to be with you and speak with you. And I've just the time we've had together at conferences recently and just hanging out together, it's so much fun.
Well, I think that what happens in this space is you meet people and you're so on the same page, and then you start talking, and then it's like this wave that kind of keeps gaining momentum. So I have so much respect for your work, and plus I agree with all the things you say. So then I'm like, okay, this is easy.
Well, you make our lives easier as clinicians out there running our experiments in our office, because you're out there foraging and pioneering and finding all these incredible technologies and therapeutics and vetting them. And you've got a keen sense for this stuff and a good network. And then you can bring them to our attention so that we can stay focused on seeing our patients. It's really cool.
Oh, well, thank you. It's a pleasure to do that. Okay, so today we are gathered here today. So you guys, for the audience, Gus and I came on here, or Dr. Vickery and I came on here, and we're like, okay, what are we going to talk about? Because there's literally no end of topics we could cover. And we landed on something that I think is going to be wildly helpful to people. In the 2-3 years now that Ozempic has been out on the market, then followed by tirzepatide, there have been so many waves of information and misinformation, and so much resistance on the one hand and over acceptance on the other. I think that an episode with someone like you, a clinician who's been in the trenches with patients, working with these compounds day in, day out, and now being willing to come out and say, okay, here's what we found. Here's what works. Here's what doesn't work. Here's why people are hitting walls. I think it's invaluable, because we can talk theory till the cows come home. Really, it's about what is actually taking place with people. And so Dr. Gus being willing to walk down this road with us, I think we're very lucky. And this is going to be a really great episode for so many people. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. And this concept around improving body composition and having obviously the metabolic health improvements that come along with that and the overall well-being improvements that come along with that is so critical. It's a conversation I've been having for 20 years in my clinic, right? Long before GLP-1 agonists were available, we were having this conversation because it was a problem in our society when I started in medicine in 2001. So it's a conversation that I'm fascinated by. I'm really excited where we are because we're finding our way to protocols and solutions that are sustainably working to solve this challenge, which is set up by our environments and, in the first place. And for a long time, all we did was hit walls. We'd, come up with a new approach, how we would manage macronutrients, blah, blah, blah. We had this new medication that maybe could help by increasing dopamine or something like that. And we'd get some results and then it would just crash. Right? And over again, we saw that. And then when the GLP-1 agonists, which have really been out probably for more than a decade now for diabetes, which we've been using them in our clinic for treating diabetes for a long time, we started seeing the pleomorphic effect of the drug on the human system. We got really excited because we're like, this is a powerful tool. And my experience is not every person's going to have a great result from every tool. We know that. So there's these exceptions, but take those out. The vast majority of people, if they understand what the tool they're using and how they must complement that tool, right, for it to work its best, they can get phenomenal results with these peptides. And I don't want to see people end up, I don't want to see people end up just using them because they find a clinician who will prescribe it and not understand this information, because then they will get a bad result at some point. They will, I can guarantee it. And at the same time, I don't want people to end up in a situation where these get a bad rap and people won't utilize these tools that could be life-changing for them. So hopefully,
100%.
Hopefully we'll, in this discussion today, allow the listeners to actually find that sweet spot of understanding of what we're talking about.
Amazing. And I think a couple of the things I would love us to distinguish is also between different populations of people that might use these products, right? And the most of the shaming, really, because there is shaming going on, is in the population of people who maybe have 10 to 20 pounds to lose, and they've been stuck for a really long time. And they have found something that can be very helpful to them. And in that population of people, we have postmenopausal women who put on a bunch of weight and, they're doing the hormones, they're watching the diet, they're exercising, they're doing all the things, and these pounds just won't budge. And so we have that population of people. We have people who make a living looking good, right? And maybe from yo-yo dieting their whole lives or whatever the case may be, they're metabolically dysregulated and their body is just resistant to fat loss. And I think that those two populations of people really take it in the teeth sometimes because there's still this kind of weird narrative that it's cheating, right? That it's an easy way out. And I'd love for you to speak to that a little bit because, again, if you are doing this properly and you're ticking all the boxes, it's not an easy, if you're doing it right, it's actually not an easy way out, but it is an opportunity where something is going to kind of flip some switches in your system that's going to allow it to release the weight. And then if you play your cards right, it's going to put you on a much better path for the long term. Yeah.
So if we use the cheating metaphor analogy, when the entire test has been rigged for failure completely, and then it's been proven over and over and over again, at some point you might just have to come up with your own method, all right, of passing the test. But we could choose better analogies potentially. The idea that you're cheating when you find a tool that could actually help you achieve a health goal, feel better about yourself, improve your longevity, your health span, I don't even understand that type of thinking whatsoever, right? People need this help. What's happened to our food is so unnatural and terrible that it's really taken over our brains and our energy balance systems, right? And we're swimming upstream in a really hard way. And if that person has tried to lose 15 or 20 pounds for a long time and they have not been successful with low calorie diets, whatever classes for exercise, then who could begrudge them for
Mm-hmm.
using a tool that helped them to lose that weight in a sustainable way that also required them to fix the foundational pieces that allow you to maintain an optimal body composition. Because you can't use the peptide and just lose weight and be in a position you want to be in. You could use the peptide, stop eating and lose weight and end up losing weight, but you're not going to end up in the position you want to be in. The only way you end up in the position you want to be in, which is what we're going to talk about, is to actually apply these foundational principles that allow your body composition to be fixed in a sustainable way.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And the goal, and here's the thing, the goal is to end up healthier, not skinnier.
Yes.
And that's a massive distinction to
A
make.
massive distinction.
Because they're two different things. You can be skinny and really sick
Yeah.
and have no lean mass and be low energy and not be optimized to live a long and healthy life. Or you can be, you can just have a better, put on the muscle, lose some of the fat. And maybe this is a good time to talk about the under the hood benefits of that these products bring, because, helping to eliminate or reduce fatty liver disease or triglycerides, normalize lipids like cholesterol and both high density and low density to kind of normalize those levels, like improve insulin sensitivity, which ultimately also helps with cognition. So helping people maybe to understand what's the downside of living with those underlying metabolic dysfunction imbalances, let's say, versus something that, again, used properly, is going to help to correct, rebalance a lot of these imbalances. And so it's not just about what we see on the inside, on the outside, which is great, right? But it's also what is going on the inside. And this is where I think these compounds are they're so incredible. I've got to stop with the thumbs up, for God's sake. So for those of you listening, you can't see this. Anybody on YouTube is seeing it. I talk with my hands a lot. And so the revenge of video is that it keeps doing this stupid little thumbs up thing. It drives me crazy. Anyway, having said all that, Dr. Gus, you go.
Yeah. So exactly. So we started using these drugs to help manage diabetes and saw great results, right? We didn't start using them as weight loss aids. The weight loss was observed once we started using them across the population. And the drugs do suppress hunger through a couple of different mechanisms. And that can be a wonderful thing for people who've been driven by their appetite all of their life and never been able to control it. To have that control is so empowering for them. So they do impact hunger. But the main aspect of the drug that's really improving health isn't so much the suppression of hunger, although that's an important part of it. It's the improvements in pancreatic function, both beta cell function in response to food loads, as well as insulin sensitivity, being able to take the components of food and move them into cells where they belong, including reducing insulin resistance in the brain, which actually might play a role in leptin resistance, which plays a role in retaining fat. So there's all those aspects of it. You begin to fix I think I can't remember if we talked about this the last time we spoke on a podcast, which was a long, long time ago. You can narrate this different ways, right? It's about health in the end. You could talk about, let's improve your body composition. And if we do it the correct way, your metabolic health is going to come on for the ride. We could also just say, let's focus on optimizing your metabolic health. Let's do the things that are going to reverse insulin resistance, normalize glycemic variability, resolve dyslipidemia, improve your lipid profiles, resolve fatty liver, normalize blood pressure, improve endothelial function. And let's develop protocols to do that. Guess what's going to happen? You're going to lose weight, right? Either way. It's all one and the same. And these drugs do have a phenomenal impact on the metabolic health aspect of the process, right? So I look at them more from that perspective. But for those who have really struggled regulating eating behavior, they're a godsend, right? They give them a freedom they've not experienced. And it is truly remarkable what can happen with that freedom when people experience it. If they do it the right way, like we're going to talk about, and they get to their end point, the freedom is such a positive thing to their brain. They've built new circuits that they're not going to go back into slavery again to food.
Yeah.
Right. They no longer have to fight that fight. They fix it in their brain through this process.
Yeah. And I think what you're speaking to is this whole willpower issue, right? And people beat themselves up a lot for not having
Yes.
willpower. And there is a point where you have to have self-discipline, of
Mhm.
course. But there's a point that when we cross the line from self-discipline into a place where it's not completely under your control, right?
Mhm.
Those neural pathways are so well worn for the behaviors you don't want that it's really hard to rewire the brain. And that is essentially what we need to do. We need to build new neural
Yep.
pathways and reinforce them to the point where they become your new normal, as opposed to the ones that that have been serving you poorly, but serving you in some way, shape, or form your whole life. So before we go any further here, let's maybe talk about the first things that people really worry about, and they worry about the side effect and
Mhm.
they worry about the black box
Yeah.
warnings. So just last week, I had a woman send me a screenshot from an FDA site, and in giant boxes, and these are the black box warnings, in giant boxes on this form was, I can't remember what it was, but it was this whole very specific thyroid cancer that has been observed
Mhm.
in rats. And even on this page, that's what it says. It's only been observed clinically in
Mhm.
rats. And she was completely, I get it. She was completely freaked out about this. She's like, why
Mhm.
would anybody use something that's going to give you, like, her interpretation is, it's going to give me thyroid cancer.
Mhm.
And then she goes down the page and now her hair's on fire because there's this gastritis thing. There's the paralysis,
Mhm.
there's the pancreatitis, and she's sitting there going, has everybody lost their
Yeah.
minds?
It's
And then
understandable.
there's the nausea and the fatigue and the this
Yeah.
and the that. So let's start with the black
Yeah.
box and then let's move our way
Yeah,
down,
it's
maybe.
really understandable. And people should pay
Mm-hmm.
attention to the potential downside of these drugs. And then you have to weigh it in the whole ecosystem of your health. So,
Yeah.
yeah, there is a potential risk that was identified for a specific form of thyroid cancer associated, with a neoplastic syndrome that is a genetically driven. Okay. And most people don't have that genetic neoplastic syndrome. Like, most people are probably not even at risk of the cancer that was identified in the rats. Then you can argue, okay, risk of cancer in general. What is the risk of cancer in people who have insulin resistance, excess unhealthy visceral adiposity, right, and metabolic dysregulation, endothelial dysfunction? Pretty high, right?
Mm-hmm.
Risk of neurodegenerative
Mm-hmm.
diseases, risk of arterial disease and arterial events, and risk of autoimmune diseases. All of those things, osteoporosis, debility, are raised when you're metabolically unhealthy. And that's like a known, real, clear risk in humans, not in rats.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
if you're in a situation like, maybe if you're a person who has a family history of thyroid cancer, or you've got other
Yeah.
risk factors for thyroid cancer, exposures that you've had to radiation or something of that sort, and you only want to lose 10 pounds, then you're probably not going to play around with this drug. And I understand that.
Yeah.
But if you're someone who does have you've had an opportunity to get a deeper dive into your health and what your insurance provides, and you do have insulin resistance and suboptimal lipids, and then I would wager that a brief exposure to the drug to fix those things is going to, the overall, like, all-cause mortality chart is going to look a whole lot better for you. But I mean, it's legitimate. And I always ask my patients, anybody that I start on these drugs or the peptide versions of them that we get through compounding pharmacies, about the family history of cancers so that we can ascertain where that risk is. But for most people, it's a unlikely risk, based on the fact that it's a very specific type of genetic cancer. The gastrointestinal side effects, when you look at the population of people using these drugs, they're pretty sick in general. The vast majority of the population that has used these drugs historically had either significant type 2 diabetes, along with potentially significant being overweight, or severe obesity, right? And some combination therein. And so the weight loss studies, as you probably know, were very high doses of what were basically the drugs that were used for diabetes. We just pushed the doses way up, and we saw these decent results. People losing weight who hadn't been able to lose weight. But, if you take a high dose drug that inhibits gastric emptying for a long period of time, there's a risk that you're going to shut down your gut function.
Yeah.
There's that just exists. But what I'd like to see is a subset of data in people who use low to moderate doses, properly with proper gut support. What's the likelihood of them ending up with permanent gastroparesis? I would wager it's very, very, very low, right? And then you get back into, okay, what about all different types of gastrointestinal diseases? And again, your biochemical health, right? That signature and how it influences that, which is significant. And can you fix the biochemical health? You're going to reduce your risk of all-cause gastrointestinal diseases, right? So you get where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
You've got to look at it in the context of where you're trying to go. So if it's just cosmetic for you, then the nausea alone that you may or may not experience, the nausea alone may not be worth it, right? But if it's really about your health, and you really do need to lose some excess fat, or your just emotional well-being is really going to change a lot by losing some excess fat. And we're social creatures. It's okay that we care about how we look and present to. That doesn't make someone a narcissist. It doesn't mean that they're controlled by vanity. We are going to age, and we have to accept that. And we're not going to always look as good as we once did. But, wanting to look better is okay. It's healthy. And so, somebody really will feel a lot better about themselves by losing 10 or 15 pounds. And that's not an insignificant amount of fat. Like, anybody can go online and look at what a pound of fat looks like, pack 10 or 15 onto a body. It's not an insignificant amount. And if some chunk of that came from the visceral tissue, then that's really important. Then they're going to feel better. So I feel like the downside can get overplayed by people. And again, it gets back to using the tool properly with the right complement of tools that go with it to get the result you want. I have seen people with side effects, heartburn, indigestion, bloating, nausea. I've seen people have those side effects severe enough that they weren't going to use the peptide any longer. And that was fine, right? Okay. It was a choice for them. The vast majority of people who got those side effects or experienced those side effects, they reduced over time. Also, if we used a protocol of gut support and we applied mindfulness of eating practices right away, because a lot of the times they take their first dose and then they go eat like they usually did. And they eat fast and they consume a lot. It's terrible, because now you've got a lot of food that's going to sit in your stomach, and you're going to feel very nauseated, very bloated, very sick. It's going to be uncomfortable. So I preemptively tell people, you're already going to go way down on your portion size. You're going to chew 25 times per bite. You're going to pre-digest food so that you really improve digestive function. You'll take some digestive enzymes to help that system out. You're going to go slow and make sure you do this the right way. You're going to eat earlier in the evening, so you're not laying down the usual 2 hours to 3 hours to clear your stomach. That's changed, right? Now we've moved up a good bit. So you probably will need to move your meal times earlier to when you would possibly get into a prone or laying position. And if you do these things, the side effect profile is minimal, and you can always mix up some baking soda and water and drink it if you need to mitigate some acid indigestion. So there's a lot of ways to take care of this.
Wasn't there a paper that just came out recently, actually, talking about how in pre-surgical procedures now they're having to adjust?
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Which, it was kind of one of those, well, duh.
Yeah, aspiration risk has gone way up because of stuff in the stomach beyond when you'd expect it. So they're now really asking people to stop the peptide a couple weeks in advance, and they're having to, use extra precautions with these individuals. So yeah, So
do they need to stop the peptide, or could they maybe just have them?
I don't know if they have to.
If you ask for 12 hours.
I don't know if they have to or
maybe
not.
Ask for,
I don't know if they have to or not, but I think the anesthesiologists, understandably, are just like, until we understand where the ball was, aspiration events are not good events in surgery. And so we're just going to go ahead and say, hey, you can live for a couple of weeks off this drug and resume.
For sure. Yeah. For sure. Okay, great. So the next big one, people talk about it, and we're going to talk about mitigating a lot of these things as our discussion. But the next big red flag that people wave around, and the media loves to hang on to this one, is if you use these products, you are going to lose your muscle. Yeah. And then you're going to basically be a bag of bones, skin and bones. So not only are you cheating, and you're going to end up riddled with all kinds of horrible things, but on top of that, you're not going to have a muscle left in your body. Yeah. and I'm dramatizing a bit, but honestly, some of the headlines have been pretty epic.
Yeah, right? I know. And I've seen it. And of course, the data and the studies suggest that 40% of the weight you lose will be in the form of lean mass. And that's not what we're going for most people. Now, if someone's 400 pounds, it's really not that big of a problem. You walk around and carry 250 extra pounds on your body, for decades, you got a lot of lean mass, right? So you can lose
Yeah.
some of that lean mass, but that's a separate category. And I want to keep that as a separate category. We're going to talk about most people who might be using it to lose anywhere from 10 to 40 pounds or 50 pounds or something like that. What we've done in our clinic is we monitor people with DEXA. Right. So we're actually tracking them with the DEXA scanner. We have their baseline, and we can rerun them every 3 months, 4 months, whatever. And then, of course, we're also monitoring metabolic markers, immune markers, hormones, all of those things. So we're looking to see if the process of losing weight using one of these peptides and using the protocols we've designed is creating various challenges, whether changes in bone density, loss of lean mass, downregulation of immune function, and downregulation of reproductive hormones, thyroid hormone, IGF-1, so excessive cortisol from stress on the body. So we're really able to keep an eye on that. And I will tell you that it's very rare to see a patient that we've worked with lose any lean mass at all. If so, maybe it might have been a couple of pounds because they didn't do the training that I suggested that they do. What we've typically seen in most individuals who are anywhere in that lose 20 to 40 pounds, that they're losing the fat, but they're actually adding muscle, right? And so we're seeing the recomp process play out using the protocol we've created, which we'll discuss. It's really simple, actually. And so, one of the most dramatic ones is a guy who's a dentist, and he's in his 40s, and we didn't do anything extra special for him. I didn't have him on other peptides and other, we did improve his testosterone with some like clomiphene or something like that, because he did have very low testosterone. But he went from 32% body fat to 12% body fat. So he lost 30 pounds of fat. During that same period, he added 20 pounds of muscle.
Holy jeez. That's amazing, right? And that flies. There used to be a saying that you can't build and burn at the same time. And these drugs have actually turned that whole concept on.
They have, because if you're in an unhealthy state, like there is a point. So then he actually got from 12%, and a few months later came back because he kept pressing in. He felt so good, and all of his blood work looked good, and his hormones looked good. And he had dropped to 9.7%. And I was like, how low do you want to go? I don't know that you need to, right? He's not a bodybuilder, and he's a good guy, and he really does care primarily about the health issue. But it showed that he could continue to make progress with that. And then he kind of rebounded back up to around 12 or 13%. And he kind of stayed around there, which I said, that's probably going to be your balance point where life is going to be easy for you. This other place is going to be, you're going to push really hard. But what we've seen is that the recomposition process, if you've got a lot of excess, like unhealthy body fat, right? And when I say unhealthy, it's because sometimes people have 10 pounds of subcutaneous fat that's distributed into areas. It's not really that unhealthy for them. It's unsightly.
It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, it's unsightly, but it's not creating a lot of metabolic dysregulation, inflammation, or other problems. And it's a bugbear to lose that fat, actually. But nonetheless, you can, but you've really got to press the body to get rid of that kind of subcutaneous fat. So unhealthy excess body fat, if you've got a lot of that to lose, you can, you're in a calorie deficit when you do this. And we're going to, again, talk about that in just a moment. But you're not in a nutrient deficit, and you're not in a protein deficit. And you're training and creating a stimulus that you need in your muscles, and they're going to be used. And the body just responds to the signals that you give it. It's ingenious. And if you give it the right set of signals, it'll just simply go where you're trying to take it for the most part until it gets optimized, right? And once it gets optimized, it's going to start running the show for itself. And so once people hit their sort of set points for energy balance that are really healthy for them based on their age and other factors. And for some people, some men, that could be 19% body fat, and for some it could be 15, and for some it could be 10. Generally speaking, the body is going to hold that. And if they try to drop that below, then they're going to start losing lean mass no matter what they do. Or they just bonk, right? Their workouts are unproductive. They hurt, recovery's slow, hormones drop. The body just says, no, this is not where we're going to go. But I think until you get to that near optimal range for you, I think you've got carte blanche opportunities to basically take it however you want to take it by controlling the variables that produce the outcomes.
Yeah. I mean, that's, you hit on a really interesting point that I think we tend to forget. From an evolutionary perspective, the body wants fat. It wants some fat, doesn't want a lot, but it needs, like, your body, your primal brain is like, we need a reserve because you never know. There could be a famine tomorrow.
Yeah.
There could be, like, we could just run out of food. It's happened
Yeah.
historically. And that the body is like, that subcutaneous fat, you think it's ugly. I think it's a buffet.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
like it's we do have this obsession with looking a certain way. Like the aesthetics it's a whole nother piece that we could talk about, but helping people to understand and draw the line and say, at least, and some people will get to that ideal for aesthetic easier than others for a whole bunch of different reasons. But I think that if we can also help people to get their heads around, let's get you to a healthy, balanced place where the blood work looks really good. You're looking better, you're feeling better, you're lighter, you're able to exercise and live your life, then helping people to find that balance. Because I do see people, they get closer and closer to their goal. They might get to their goal and now they're like, okay, well, that's not quite good enough. I want insurance weight loss, right? I want to keep going in case if I should put on a few extra pounds. And it kind of becomes a little bit of this slippery slope where now there's this fear. So, which is more of a head game.
It is, right? But I think it's critical. And I try to tell people all along, and especially in the beginning, I try to do the screening I can for eating disorder type issues, right?
Oh yeah.
Because if they've got now a lot of people might have had a childhood eating disorder, anorexia, bulimia, and they've recovered from it and they're past that, and they do need to lose weight to get healthier. And it's not inappropriate in these situations to help them, these drugs, but you got to be really careful that you don't create eating disorders for people. And so, really helping them understand that the peptide is catalyzing a lot of processes, kind of lubricating the whole thing, making this easier for you to get where you want to go. But it's actually your habit matrix that's creating the result. And you always have to remember that, right? It's what you've done is this gave you leverage. It gave you an opportunity to implement these foundational habits that are based on the body's design so that it fixes itself. And as long as you may sustain that going forward, you're not going to relapse. You're not going to have problems with this. So don't get excessively psychologically attached to the peptide. Be grateful for it. Let it do its job for you. And the problem, of course, with all the bad outcomes are people who are just letting the peptide do the work for them. That's where we see
doing nothing to help. Yeah, 100%. Okay, so let's get into it. So let's talk about the right way to do this. And let's start with one thing in particular, and this is something that comes up a lot in groups, is hormones. Do people have to be undergoing hormone therapy to be using these peptides properly? And so, I think men and women are very different. I think for men, quite often they're coming in, their testosterone is low, they're not sleeping very well, they're not exercising, they're carrying extra weight, they're kind of inflamed. Their testosterone is going to be low. If you can help them to optimize, very often those testosterone levels tend to recover. Maybe they don't recover exactly where they want to go, but it's easier for them to recover. Yes. You're talking about a woman going through menopause or even post-menopause, those hormones ain't coming back.
Right. That's right.
They're just not coming back. So can we talk a little bit about this hormone lever? Like, let's talk about the women, because guys, we love you, and we love you because you're simpler.
Yeah.
So
in almost every,
I say that
in almost every way.
In so many ways. Yeah. It's a huge part of your charm,
simpler, also mentally simpler as well.
No, not at all. God knows if we were as complicated as each other, nobody would ever get anywhere. Yeah. But let's just say that for women, do they need to be on hormone therapy for these things to work? Because this is a question I get a lot.
No. Now, I would advocate for any woman who's lost reproductive function, like lost their hormones, gone through menopause, who's a good candidate for it, to consider hormone replacement therapy. I would. If they don't have contraindications, personal reasons why they cannot do it, I think it's a much healthier state for a woman. If in a population where we might live to 80, 90, or 100, which didn't happen for most of human history, that you would maintain the signal of testosterone, progesterone, and estrogen. So for women who it's an option and it doesn't pose a risk based on their individual health profile, I'd be like, I'd consider it, right? So there's that population, and they've got their hormones and they're being monitored. And okay, so we can just say, the peptide will work as well for them. Someone who can't use these hormones for whatever reason, Just cannot. No, it might take more time to get your result.
Okay.
You know, if you have, and with a woman, you have to ask, okay, well, what is it? Like, can you still, it's a no-go for estrogen, but what about testosterone? Could you do just testosterone? Because if you can do testosterone, the muscle response to training and the ability to, improve lean mass, but also lose fat is accentuated, right? So if this is primarily a concern around the risk factors of estrogen, maybe blood clots or coagulopathies, then testosterone might be an option for you, And so I would still look at what can you do? Can you do DHEA? Would that be okay? I mean, it does get bioconverted into reproductive hormones. So it's nuanced, but if you can't use hormones, you will still be healthier to lose visceral fat, reduce insulin resistance, and improve your overall health. So the risk associated with menopause and aging, losing bone density, losing lean mass, losing cognitive function, all those things, they're going to be slowed down by getting healthier. Nice. And this peptide will still help you get healthier if you need that help, right? If you need the help that the peptide offers. So I see no reason why a woman who is postmenopause and cannot use hormone replacement, I see no reason why they wouldn't consider this peptide. In fact, I might argue it's even more important that they would consider the peptide.
Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, cool. So let's talk about the right way to do this.
Yeah.
Because I talk about it some, but you've been doing this clinically now for, what is it, like a year or 2 years, like focused on these specific compounds.
Couple years
like
now.
You've been working on body composition with your patients for 20 years.
Yes.
But, in terms of these protocols with these specific drugs, you've been really dialing this in now for a couple of years. And to the point where you've created protocols and stacks and all that stuff. So
yes. Right. So the way that you do this correctly is also the way that you address cellular health correctly through most of your life. That's the beautiful thing, right? That this isn't like, this is an alternative protocol to achieve a specific health goal. And then when I'm done, I got to go create a whole new protocol for how I'm going to actually maintain health. Actually, no, this is just honoring the body's basic design for health. And so it centers around the concept of nutrient sufficiency. Right? Does your body have what it needs to function normally? I can tell you after testing hundreds of people with comprehensive micronutrient assessments, along with other studies where we get a window into key micronutrients. We're not talking about just vitamins and minerals. We're talking about essential fatty acids, phospholipids, and amino acids and amino acid metabolites. I can tell you that other than those who already understand this conundrum we're in and have been properly supplementing their diet to get the nutrients into their body that the food is often missing, everybody else is going to have significant nutrient deficiencies or insufficiencies. Insufficiency meaning you're not medically deficient, but your levels are at a point where you're just going to be able to sustain function. You're not going to be able to push in. You're not going to expect high performance out of your machine. So what I try to help people understand is that food is a source of calories, which is energy, and it is that. But it's also, more importantly, a source of nutrients, right? And these nutrients, vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, and essential amino acids are actually what maintain the structure and function of your body. They do that job, right? Which is why your nervous system really gets geeked out when it's deprived of essential amino acids and essential fatty acids, not when it's deprived of calories. Your like intense hunger drive when you haven't eaten isn't primary. Well, some of that's in trained habits and this kind of stuff, and the stomach's empty and intestinal peptides, blah, blah, blah. But let's take those out. Most of the hunger drive is your brain seeking essential nutrients, not seeking calories, because your body is designed with a calorie reserve to fill in the gaps when you couldn't get to food. And so when you're hungry, you have to start thinking, what's my body, what's my brain looking for? It's looking for nutrients. Right. And what we found is that if we give it the nutrients and forget about the calories, in which we were able to do through a nutritional support stack of essential amino acids, essential fatty acids, phospholipids, and vitamins and minerals, and extras of certain things like B vitamins. If we do that, we go ahead and give the body the nutrients it's looking for, hunger signal goes way down. So some people, when we initiate around body comp, they're interested in the peptide, but they don't really have, they got reasonable appetite control. You know, and it's not, and they're like, I've never known what is my hunger if I'm nutrient sufficient. So maybe I'll just try that experiment first and see what happens. And for many of them, they're like, I don't need the peptide. Like,
Oh, interesting.
yeah.
I see. Yeah.
So just addressing the nutrient sufficiency piece goes a long way to helping. And not only that, your body can detox. You can make digestive enzymes and improve gut function. I mean, it's like you go down the entire laundry, neurotransmitter production, hormone production, like biliary and bowel quality, all of that stuff starts to change when your body has what it needs. If it doesn't have enough of what it needs, then what it has to do is it starts to have to compromise certain areas of function. So, your heart has to beat, right? Your blood has to flow through. You have to deliver blood. Your lungs have to breathe. Your brain does have to do some level of processing. The liver has to do its work. The kidneys. Your body is going to end up shunting, reducing function in other less essential areas, right? So you're hamstrung in your body's ability to perform. So we really focus on your job is to focus on nutrients. And if you need to lose a lot of body fat, you've got your calories. That's your calories.
They're there.
They're there.
Yeah.
And you're not going to run out of them for a long time, right? Now, I want to be clear. This has been an evolving process for me. There will be a lot of people who will take issue with what I'm saying right here. And wait a second, that's dangerous. And you can't. I'm just telling you what I've observed in my clinic over a lot of patients and with good outcomes. Because I don't want to share information with an audience that could lead to bad outcomes for them. Right? And so I'm very confident in what I'm sharing. Your body is completely comfortable using its calories for a sustained period of time down to whatever is a healthy body fat percentage for you, as long as it has the nutrients it needs to maintain structure and function. And that's this kind of really important understanding that I think has been missing for people, that they do look at food and they understand, there's nutrients and there's calories, but they haven't really gotten it that clear in their mind how essential those nutrients were. And then, of course, the protein piece, right? So we really push the protein. This is scientifically backed. We've got, forget about the peptide, whatever. Every time someone wants to go really low calorie, if they maximize protein, really push it up there, they get better results, period. Right? So we clearly push the protein, but we're not asking people to eat that much. So we're really big on complementing with protein powders and essential amino acids. And I've got some patients who literally will take 25 to 30 grams of essential amino acids a day, drink one, whatever plant or whey-based protein shake, and then eat a portion of animal protein at dinner. And that's it, right? But they're getting an equivalency of 180 grams a day. And they're doing well, right? It's working. Their body is receiving it and it's going to work for them. So the protein is critical. You can't compromise it. If you compromise it, you'll get a bad result, period. Your body will catabolize muscle and other forms of lean mass to get amino acids if it has to. But if you give it the amino acids, then it will limit muscle catabolism. However, moving to the next point, if you don't force the muscle to go to work, your body will still strip it down, because that's just part of the ancestral program of a calorie deficit, right?
It's expensive.
Yeah, exactly. So,
muscle is expensive.
Yeah. So what we're doing, because we have these tools, and I'm not talking about the peptide specifically, I'm talking about the ability to optimize nutrients, especially amino acids, independent of food. Our ancestors didn't have this. You can trust me. I bet every hunter-gatherer would have loved to have had a thing full of essential amino acids, B vitamins and phospholipids. They would have loved it if they could have had that. But we have that now, because we have the ability to throw a curveball to our nervous system, to create a set of inputs that it's not really historically adapted to. We've got nutrients and we've got protein equivalency. Okay? And then we've got this training stimulus of, oh my gosh, the muscles are being used every single day. And we've got calories, right? What do we do with this? Well, we use the calories we have. We use the nutrients that are being provided. It appears that something about our environment requires that we keep our strength or even get stronger. So that's what we'll go about the business of doing, because we have what we need to do it: calories, amino acids, and micronutrients. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think, it speaks to a little bit. Do you remember that? I mean, I know you know this case where there's this case study of some guy who was morbidly obese and was put on a fast for a year.
Yes, that's absolutely
right.
Yes.
But what was the one thing they gave him?
Was it a vitamin?
It was vitamins, right? Because here's the problem. You will store excess energy as fat.
Yes.
But in that fat is not the micronutrients.
That's right.
It's not rich in micronutrients. So and it's the distinction between calories, food for energy, and food for deep nutrition. Yes. There's a distinction to be made. And then there's also the piece of food as information for your cells.
Right.
And that's embedded in the micronutrients and the energy. And I think part of that is we're going to talk about in what are the, aside from the essential amino acids, which are basically building blocks, the other products that you're using to fulfill those micronutrient needs essentially come from food.
Yes.
They're not just, you're not giving someone a handful of pills. So, and I think that these are important and really powerful distinctions to make, because it's about eating this nutrient dense, energy poor diet, which is a very different, which most people are running around eating a very energy rich, nutrient poor.
That's right. Yeah.
Diet.
Yeah.
Which is what gets us into this mess in the first place.
Yeah. And it was just an interesting observation when I was in Uganda last year. And part of what I wanted to get my mind around was their nutritional issue, because they really do have malnourishment and the poor Ugandans. And what I observed is that those that live in the most extreme poverty have pretty severe malnourishment. But those who live on the bottom, like kind of what would you call their lower middle class, they don't have enough food. They do not have enough food. But what they do have tends to come from their little local farms and things of that sort, and is more nutrient dense. There is some like mass ag stuff going on over there where they're beginning to, like, seed oils and glyphosate is making its way. I hope that they'll understand the folly of that. But whatever the case, a lot of these smaller villages, they got their chickens and they kill a goat, and then they've got some produce and plantains and yams and things like that. And so what I realized is, okay, we've got these two different populations. In Uganda, you've got a large contingent of people who are both nutrient insufficient and calorie insufficient. In America, you've got a bunch of people who are actually nutrient insufficient and calorie excess. And if you look at the health of the two populations, I mean, the average Ugandan who had enough to eat is far healthier, right, than the person. And so I think also, just from thinking of it through this sort of adaptive evolutionary lens, I think our body had to figure out this idea around not enough food for a long time, and how can we conserve nutrients, recycle nutrients, and developed a lot of resiliency around that. This concept of all this excess energy coming in all the time, but without the nutrients needed to operate the system is the body doesn't know what to do with that at all, right? It's complete. We have no. And I could be, again, I don't like to use absolute terms because who knows, but as far as I could tell, we have no genetic coding for how to deal with that conundrum. And so we get sick,
Yeah. No, over the top excess, like chronic excess all the time.
I mean, give it enough time and maybe people will sweat profusely, fidget out of their shoes every single day, and not absorb, like, poop a ton of calories out. And the body will finally figure it out and say, oh, okay, we got this excess energy coming in. We're going to dump it all. Right. But I don't want to wait on that.
Well, it's not going to happen in our lifetime.
No, it's not going to happen in our lifetime.
Okay. So, all right. So let's dive a little bit into the resources that you're using for your, actually there's one other piece we haven't touched on yet. And I know that it's a critical piece, and that is the microbiome.
Yes.
And
so you got to feed the gut.
And the impact of using these drugs. Well, first of all, the fact that most people are coming in with a dysbiotic microbiome to begin with. And then the further impact of, delayed gastric emptying and slowed down digestion. And if you're not doing digestive enzymes, now you've got, it becomes just a hot mess in the microbiome. And so addressing microbiome balance in the context of also using these drugs, once you're fixing the machine, you may as well fix all of it. And that's a pretty critical piece of the puzzle right there.
It's kind of fascinating because a lot of times when people have various forms of bacterial overgrowth and gut challenges, one of the things that will be attempted to improve them is fasting or elemental diets, right? Yeah. And to some extent, if a lot of the food you're eating is toxic, terrible stuff, it's got, artificial emulsifiers that strip out healthy biofilms, and it has glyphosate, which is, torching your biome and damaging your tight junctions. And then take the other things, if what you're eating is poisonous and not good for you in general, actually reducing the volume of that coming in is like step one in helping your gut.
It's a win.
Exactly. Gut get healthier. And so the first phase, if we're going to really reduce food volume, the thing I teach people is that you're going to eat a lot less. I mean, a lot less than you're probably used to. And so now that you're eating that much less, it can really be clean. Like it's fine if you want to cook a steak, you want to cook a potato. We can talk about different macronutrients later, like we talked about before the podcast. It's just that focus on the quality, right? And make it taste good to yourself. Enjoy it, but focus on the quality. Stop poisoning your gut. And you'll have the opportunity to do it because you're just not eating large volumes and you're not that hungry. So you have this opportunity to do that. So I try to get people to definitely go there. And then we already talked about supporting digestive function. I tend to put people on both digestive enzymes and TUDCA when they're on this to support bile flow and biliary function as well. And then mindfulness of eating, really slow down, chew thoroughly, pay attention to satiety signals. Because what we want you to do is fix this permanently, not just, push through it and be like, oh, I got to where I wanted to go and then fall back again. But then we have this whole biome, which I think is improved just by eating less food that was non-toxic and getting that clean food. But ultimately, we do have to feed our biome, and we do that primarily with various types of fibers and phytonutrients, also essential amino acids and essential fatty acids, as well as what am I forgetting here? I just had the whole list in my brain and said, and just went, fermented foods that might help. And so what I have people do is, if they're willing, and there's different ways to get this done, they can choose, because the fibrous foods that they might choose that are organic and healthy and non-toxic don't have a lot of calories, right? And so they can eat more of the different diverse fibrous foods, and they can certainly eat non-starchy vegetables that are organic from healthy soil and get phytonutrients and polyphenols and all of those types of things. So they can do it through their food, or we can use powders. Right? Organic, non-toxic, greens powder, reds powder, alternate day to day, and just go ahead and put it into our body. And we can mix that with fiber powder. So blends of different fibers. Garden of Life has great raw organic fiber products, and people will find it repulsive, but other people will find it's like a miracle for their gut. It's a really healthy blend of different plant sprouts and grain sprouts and flaxseed, and it's all ground, and it's got all kinds of, it's like a superfood for the gut, And so you can, and I have this listed on the little protocols I created, like the different ways you can do this, right? So you could get your fiber through your food, or you can just take a scoop of a fiber powder and mix it with the greens powder and throw it down real quick, along with some protein. Yeah. That's the approach that I still use. Is during the day when I don't have a lot of time and I don't want to think too much about food, I just create concoctions that are blends of fibers and phytonutrients and protein, and I throw down my fatty acid capsules with them, and I just take the whole thing down, and it makes my life easy. And I get this huge bolus of both gut and body nutrients, and really not that many calories. And it feels good, and it's sustainable. It's just something I could do for a long, forever if I needed to. And then eat food at night, which is what I tend to do, and be healthy. So you got to stop poisoning the gut. And so reducing your food volume, if you are eating poisonous foods, will help. Just reducing the volume of the poison helps, but preferably cleaning that up. And then you've got to support digestive function, and then you've got to keep feeding the gut. And so that is a really important piece. But you're not just feeding the gut with the phytonutrients and things like this. You're also feeding your body as well. Yeah. But there are capsules and tablets as part of the protocol as well.
Well, I mean, I think that, the people will do these protocols depending on their own proclivities, right? Someone who has the time and the energy and wants to really do this with food, and loves to cook, for example. I mean, they can make themselves soups and things like that. The challenge is, as you've said, and as we've seen, is that you really don't have much appetite. And so it just becomes a lot harder to get enough food in you to get all the micronutrients that your body requires. And so that's where, we can call them hacks or we can call them shortcuts. But we need strategies to provide the body with those essential nutrients that it really, really needs in the face of not enough food volume. And, which brings us to the concept. I can't remember if we were talking about it before the podcast now or during, this whole idea of fasting that people have gotten, people have gotten very attached to intermittent fasting. They kind of wear it as a badge of honor. It's convenient. It saves them time. And fasting is that one thing that you actually want to do less of, I think. And I think when we did my testing last year, one of the things that showed up was that my gut lining integrity was compromised. And part of that is too much fasting is going to damage the lining of your gut, which people don't really think of that. They're like, well, I'm just mitigating the number of calories. Well, there's a point where it becomes a stressor. It's no longer a hormetic stressor. It's now just a stressor.
Right.
And when you're using these compounds, this is the time to start your day with protein first thing in the day. And, like your concoction doesn't fully work for me. I can't do
I forgot that maybe I'd send that to you.
I can't, I used to call it what was I calling it? Swamp water.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
It had the greens, it had the phospholipid oil, it had the fiber. And it was kind of like a game at first. And then after a while I realized I don't like this. And then so I would make it and then it would sit on my desk. And swamp water looks bad enough when you first make it.
I know.
But when it's been
You let that
for
stuff
3 hours,
sit.
it now starts to divide up and it's just nasty. So you do, to your point, have, I found if I drink my greens cold on their own, I enjoy them. Yeah. It works for me, right? My whey protein powder, which I love, and I happen to do well with whey protein, I can put the fiber in there. I can put my creatine in. There's lots of things I can throw in there. It still tastes amazing, and I'm happy to drink it.
Yeah.
And so you do have to find your way in those things. And what's amazing, and what you were just saying, is this is a meal that takes 5 minutes to make and to consume. So if you're a really busy person, you can take 10 minutes to slow yourself down, consume this meal, wait another 5, and then go back to your day. What I would not advise people do is try to chug this as they're running from one thing to the other, because you will end up feeling kind of poor.
Well, I can testify if you do it.
And I'm sure if
you do it enough, you eventually get adapted to it. It doesn't bother you.
I feel bloated just thinking about it, because it's just a lot of volume, right?
It is in a way. You're right, and your point is the exact one. People can find their own solutions. It's the concepts that matter. The principles that we're teaching here are what matter. How you get it done is up to you. What you can't compromise on, you've got to get this done. Right? If the listener won't take anything else home, these things we're stopping on and emphasizing, if you have to do this, if you just want to be a healthy person, right? This is foundational health. This isn't just weight loss. If you want to improve your body composition, you absolutely have to do this. If you want to do it by using one of these peptides, you better do this, right? And if you do it and you learn the process, as Natalie alluded to, it becomes very efficient. And the truth is that once you figure out your ways of doing it that suit you, you're likely going to continue them forever, because it becomes easy. Then it's like, oh my gosh, it's easy. I can get this. It just makes my life so much easier. And there will be times to feast, and then you should feast, right? You're going to meet all your friends at a great restaurant and go eat. Don't think about, if you're on the peptide, be careful about how much you eat, but just go enjoy food. Just relax and enjoy it. I really want people to rediscover their joy of eating as they work through this process, and as they get properly nourished and begin to experience good health, and they also have this leverage. I just see these amazing transformations that just make my heart swell. Right.
Yeah, I love that. You actually bring up a really good point that I wanted to explore with you a little bit. There's this thing that happens even in the beginning stages of using these peptides is you have major appetite suppression for the first few days. And then for a lot of people, the last couple of days of the week before they get to their next dose, their appetite starts to come back. And one of the things that I've seen happen with people is they panic and they're like, no, I don't want to eat. And whereas for me as a practitioner, I'm like, well, hold on. Actually, this is a good thing, because here's what's happening here. You're now going through a cycle of not fasting, but let's say eating a lot less. And you get to a natural point at the end of the week where maybe you're going to eat a little bit more. And so there's a signaling thing in the brain where the message back is actually that it's not a famine.
Yep.
We've got lots of food. And so you're kind of allowing for a natural cycle. And what I see happening with a lot of people is they're like, oh, no. So what I need to do is double down on my dose, and I'm going to do a dose on Saturday, and then I'm going to do another dose on Wednesday, because God forbid I should eat any more 1 or 2 days a week. And do you maybe want to speak to that a little bit?
I just love the way you think, Natalie. Maybe it's just because it's like how I think. You know?
Sometimes I think we do share
Yeah,
part of a
I
brain. I'm
know.
nowhere near as smart as you are,
Yeah,
but we
no,
definitely
you're
think alike.
going now. So yes, and I prep people for this. It's going to kick in, and it might take a day or two to really kick in. And then you're going to have this effect where 2 or 3 days before, maybe just one, your hunger is going to start to rebound. It's not going to be overwhelming. You're not going to be like ravenous and I got to go eat. You'll just feel more hunger than you had. This is your perfect opportunity to do the cycling you discussed. You're still not going, just because of the gastric emptying effect, you're not going to be able to excessively eat. You're just going to eat more. So if I've got you, and I'm just throwing a number out, so please, audience, don't take this home. But if, let's say I've got you at 1,200 calories, right, under 1,200 a day, and that's it. And we've also got you through physical, and you're a male, and through physical activity, I've got you up at close to 3,000 calories a day of probable metabolic rate, right? So that's a big calorie deficit right there. It's a huge,
that's a big gap.
Deficit. Now, I'm not going to do that for an extended period of time. I might do it to catalyze them getting into this process, right? To force the body to begin to say, okay, we got to go here. But if I have you there, it's not going to hurt you for 3 days of the week to go up to 1,800 calories, right? In fact, it's probably going to help you if you do that. And so, yes, you just let this do its thing. You anticipate, hey, I'll have a little hunger return. It won't be overwhelming. I won't feel like binge eating. And it's okay. I'm going to eat a little more food, because we're also playing the long game here, not the short game. Right? This is, we're going for the big cookie at the end, right? Well, that's the wrong thing to use. Whatever is a reward.
The pot of gold. The pot of gold.
Right. But, and so I'm like, this is to reshape this for the rest of your life. This is so you don't fight these battles any longer. This is to solve this problem forever. And so we're going to take our time and we're going to do it right. And if somebody's only got 25, 30 pounds to lose, then probably we can get that weight, most of that weight off of them, and add anywhere from, depending on, again, gender, et cetera, add anywhere from 5 to 10 pounds of muscle. That can probably be done in 6 months relatively easily. But
love that you said that.
But if they've got 60 pounds to lose, then we're probably going to be 18 months, because it's not it's just double, so it takes double. It's we're going to run through a plateau. The nervous system's going to get nervous. We're going to have to be delicate in how we manage that plateau, because we can't try to force the body into more stress. So we're going to have to actually accept that there's going to be a period of time that the nervous system is recalibrating and figuring out things are okay. And then you're going to end up being able to push your training up. And then you're going to end up seeing that you push through that plateau. I've seen it over and over again in people who need to
talk about the plateau. Yeah. How do you help people to, because I see this all the time. People hit a plateau and they panic and they want to double their dose but before I let you go with that, I just want to highlight to the audience a point that you just made that I think is really important. And that's the pace of fat loss, the pace of loss of fat. And basically what you're talking about is more or less a pound a week.
Yes.
As a cadence, no more. I mean, you might sometimes at the beginning, because people are losing inflammation at the same time, they may drop more initially, but I get people reaching out to me all the time saying, I only lost 4 pounds last month. And I'm like, and your point would be,
right. Exactly.
What's the problem?
4 pounds.
I'm not hearing a problem here. Yeah. And so I just guys, understand it took you a long time to get to where you are, and it's going to take time, patience, so that you don't bully your body into doing something and then suffer the consequences on the other side. Now, let's talk about the plateau.
Yeah, and it's such an important point. Yeah, that's what I'm ultimately aiming for. The purpose of the more severe calorie deficit, and I'm sorry because you said let's talk about the plateau and you're the boss here, but the purpose of the severe calorie deficit is that we need to force the adaptation. For somebody who's been carrying that weight for months and months and months, the body, you can't nudge it there. We talked about that. Well, you and I did. You got to really kind of force it to recognize, wow, we don't have the calories we need, but we do have the nutrients. And then there's also an enormous amount of upregulation of genetic expression, protein synthesis that takes place around utilizing all these pathways that have been dormant. They've just been turned off. And so that can take time. And then there's confounders like high toxicant load, and your body will resist losing fat. If you've got a bunch of toxicants stored in your visceral fat, that's a little more complexity that we don't necessarily have time to get into today, but it's just important for people to remember that their body's not broken. This can be fixed. There's different reasons why you're not getting the result you want. What we're talking about are the fundamental inputs of shifting body comp in a human system that has the potential to respond to those prompts. If it's not responding to those prompts, then you should get your hormones checked. You might need to do a detox, right? You'll have to begin to look at some other variables that could be influencing your body's ability to lose that weight. But if even a disease system, if it has hormonal balance to some extent, and it has the ability to manage toxicants like adequate glutathione production and other other aspects of detox, it will begin to lose that fat. When it has to, it has to. If the body's got to do it, it will. So we hit the plateau, and the plateau can happen for different reasons. Most of the time, when I explore with someone why they've hit the plateau, it turns out that they've had some type of attrition in their discipline around the protocol, right? So that's usually what I see is sometimes they've just backed off the supplementation because they felt like it was getting tiresome, and they're not getting the levels of amino acids and other nutrients that they need. And that'll cause your body to kind of balk a bit on this whole process. A lot of times they're not applying the fitness side of the equation. So they've kind of fallen out of their training. They got busy, they had to travel, and they didn't do other things. And now they're not really pushing metabolic rate through training. And so we have to really reemphasize that every aspect of this protocol has to be applied, not 100% of the time, but most of the time to get results. And so the fitness piece is critical. The muscle training is critical. You've got to do it. It's like that's one of the most important aspects of the whole thing. They're all important. Right now we hit these plateaus that, I kept my training up. I'm taking my supplements. I have not increased my eating, and I feel good. This is typically what we'll hear. I do feel good. I'm not excessively hungry. My energy is good, and I'm getting a good result. I feel a whole lot better than I did, 30 pounds ago. I'm just not losing weight. What I infer at that moment is the system is good. The things are healthy. The person feels good. They're doing what they need to. The nervous system is recalibrating energy balance. It said, whoa, through hormones like leptin and others, 30 pounds of stored energy is gone, right?
Holy crap.
Yeah, we've got nutrients and amino acids and everything, but we gotta do an assessment here, right? Is there a problem? And when people are in that stage, what I've told them is if you try to force it, that's what my original ideas were years ago, and even before the peptides, let's try to force another adaptation, you'll get a bad result. You can't force it when your nervous system is in that state. So instead, I'm like, you don't need to eat more, just hold steady, stay in balance, and give this just a little bit of time. And we'll commonly see a month, weight just starts coming off again. But if after 3 to 4 weeks, there's no movement, I have them deepen their training. I have them push in harder on the physical side, and that'll usually push through. And then the next 30 pounds goes, and then they hit the next plateau. So individuals who are going to lose 80 to 100 pounds are typically going to go through at least 2, if not 3 plateaus in the process. And I just tell them it's normal and it's not something to get discouraged about. Historically, most of these people who've done this before will have lost 30 pounds and then whiplashed back. And they get really freaked out at that 30-pound mark because that's where they always failed in the past. But that was also a model that didn't understand the nutrient aspects. They just didn't understand these principles. And again, I didn't understand them either. So I'm not criticizing that what's happened in the past. I was a part of that. I had plenty of patients go through that same experience. It's just that our understanding has evolved, thankfully, and we have these incredible tools to complement the process and make it a lot easier for people to apply these methods and let them work for them.
Yeah, it's almost like plateau PTSD.
Yeah,
in a way, like it's a reaction. And I'm sure that we were going to talk about this, and we're coming up on time, but it goes without saying, but we will say it anyway, that the other pieces of the puzzle that you need to be taking care of at the same time is your sleep, your managing your stress management, your breath work, getting outside, not sitting in front of screens thinking you're going to fall asleep properly, like all of those other, we can call them soft factors, but they're really not, because, sleep deprivation is going to make a mess of your hormones. Stress is going to make a mess of your hormones. All of chronic unmanaged stress is going to make a mess of your hormones. Like leaning into those pieces of the puzzle as well, are are just as important, I would
Oh
say,
yeah, they are.
as
But
everything we've been talking about here.
so glad you said this because we do actually emphasize the whole lifestyle approach, right? Because the
Yeah.
truth is that while you're losing weight and feeling better, like really, really good, your body is under enormous stress. This kind of calorie deficit sustained over time with hard physical demand on the body is incredibly stressful to the nervous system, right? And so you can still do cold plunges and saunas. I think saunas, whatever, as much as you like, as long as you hydrate and replenish minerals and stuff like that. But you do have to look at your hormetic stress strategy docket and understand you've got two powerful forms of hormetic stress that you're applying on a continuity basis. So you might back off and actually allow more sleep and more breath work and more time in nature. Once you've done your workouts, however you're going to achieve the muscle training and the fitness piece, leisurely walks in the woods, right? I mean, just really taking it easy on your nervous system and recognizing you will feel so much better. I've seen it over and over again. You'll be so delighted in that it's okay. You'll be okay taking the rest and just really helping your body through this process because you'll want more and more of what you're experiencing. And so that's critical. I'm so glad. And also back to the fasting, because I don't think we ever cleaned that up. I typically recommend 12-12 time feeding intervals when people are doing this. If you're in that type of calorie restriction, it's like a fasting mimetic. Right. When you're in this kind of calorie deficit for this type of time, it's as though you are fasting in a way. And so don't try to go 16 or 18 hours, typically at 12 and 12. And as Natalie already said, when you start that 12-hour time feeding interval, start it with some protein and nutrients. And that can be in the form of a shake. It could be real food, or it can be just the supplement stack to start with, fatty acids and amino acids and vitamins and minerals like that. That'll be a suitable way to go ahead and prime your nervous system. We've got things coming in and we can work with it. And so that's really critical. I would recommend only that and not doing any extended fasts during this process, or at least towards the tail end, and you're really rebalancing your eating. And then when it comes to if you're going to choose this calorie deficit point, 1,200, 800, 1,500 calories, it really depends on your individualization. You're going to, of course, make sure about half of that's protein if you can. The other half of it should be clean. But as I discussed earlier, it really doesn't matter whether it's carbs or fats. We
didn't talk about that on the podcast. Actually, we talked about that before.
That's what I'm really happy. That's what I was thinking. Yes. Yeah. And so it really you don't need to, like, if you prefer fats, that's fine. If you like ketogenic, that's fine. If your body does well with that. But honestly, the studies suggest, and what I've seen is that typically people get better results, feel better, get better muscle response to training if their other source of calories is more in the carb camp than the fat camp. So having healthy carbs, obviously not highly processed, high sugar carbs, but some fresh fruit is of course fine, even though that's a little more simple sugars, but the whole fruit. And then, starchy vegetables, potatoes, organic ancestral legumes and things like that. If you do well with those, you will appreciate what they do. They're satiating and they give your muscles glycogen, and that really causes your body to feel better. It helps sustain thyroid and reproductive hormones. So you don't have to choose carbs, but don't be afraid to choose carbs. You're already, in a sense, I could get plastered by the ketogenic crowd, and I'm a big fan of using ketosis strategically and know all about it. But in a sense, you're already kind of ketogenic because of your calorie deficit. Right. You're going
to, well, depending on where it's at, but definitely I think some healthy fat's going to be important.
Yes.
One other nice little hack, actually pre-workout for people who need it, is the exogenous ketones.
Yes. I think they're great.
HPMN or Ketone Aid, like either of those products are fantastic.
My preference is Ketone Aid, and I'm not sponsored by either, so that's what I can say. It's a true ketone ester. It doesn't have to be metabolized into one. Do recognize those are great for the workout piece, and they're also great sometimes the first few weeks of adapting to this to stymie some of the mental stuff. But it is a source of energy for your body. Right. So if you add them in, there are calories in ketone esters, and you have to account for that as part of your whole protocol. But most of my patients who don't mind the extra cost for at least the first month while they're trying to get their bodies adapted, because the first few weeks can be challenging, while you're getting all these things going, they'll use ketone esters. It really kind of smooths the pathway.
I love it. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. I think we've covered all the major points. I'm sure people will still have questions. Yeah. However,
We didn't get to what do you do when you get close to your goal, when it's time to back.
Okay, let's take a few minutes just to talk about that. Like we have to cross the finish line. We have to take people across the finish line. We can't leave them hanging. They're like, okay, wait a minute, now what?
Yeah. So first and foremost, for some individuals who've struggled with metabolic health issues and significant, challenges with fat, maybe they're going to be on these the rest of their life, right? And that's okay. You can be healthier, but you just do have to account for nutrients and gut function and all of those things. And so we'll say there is a population that maybe they're just going to have a better life using these tools, right, as part of the matrix. And there's new ones coming. Retatrutide is going to be exciting because it's a activated peptide. It's really exciting in this space.
It scares me a little bit.
Yeah, I'm excited about the opportunity. I'm excited about experimenting on some people with it. I'm sorry. I'm
just a mad scientist here.
Anyway, so for everybody else, you do not become dependent on these peptides, right? If you use this type of approach and you match it to you and you figure out your body and listen to it, you'll find this pathway that for you sustains like healthy body composition, feeling good, and minimizes the disease risk for the rest of your life. At some point, we're going to age, and these things are going to happen to us no matter what. But for the not until they have to happen, right? You'll push it all downstream, and you will not need the peptide. I want to be clear about that. The peptide might be a tool you want to keep around. For some people, it's a tool that they pull out for the holiday stretch, or they pull it out for a cruise, where they know they're likely to just gorge themselves and overeat, and they don't want to do that to themselves. They want to back up 5 pounds in 1 week. So they're like, hey, I'll use a little dose before I have these types of events, and you're not going to hurt yourself doing those types of things. Some people are going to find that a subtherapeutic dose, actually half of the starting dose, just that kind of helps give them enough leverage and helps them feel better. And some people are going to find that a very low dose or a half dose every other week is going to end up working really well for them. I encourage my patients, when we've gotten them very close to their goal, let's start experimenting with weeks off of this and see how you feel. But keep the nutrient support up. And what they find is, I'm really not that hungry. I feel pretty good.
Yeah.
And then they get their confidence. But I'm like, but let's keep it around just in case you have these, moments of trial or what have you. And you can always go back to it for brief periods. But my goal for most people is, let's get off of these, right? And now let's just have this body that's tuned to health, like perform for you. But there's really no one formula. It's individualized, and it's okay to take doses lower than the starting dose, meaning like literally the half of the starting dose for whichever peptide you're using. It's okay to go every other week. It's okay to go 1 week a month. You can kind of play around with it or just stop it and then reintroduce it for a season and then stop it again. As far as
nice. Good. I was hoping you would say that. And I also do want to say, going back to the beginning of all this, I know that when I used, it was semaglutide at the time because there wasn't tirzepatide. It took at least a month before my body started moving. Yeah. Before it allowed any weight. And I remember, like, I was in the Dominican Republic and I was like, this sucks. Should I just keep increasing the dose? And then all of a sudden, like magic, 2 weeks later.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah, it's so critical.
It's just having patience.
Yeah, you have to be patient. Let it play out. Don't put yourself on higher doses that increase the side effect profile and that could create a dependency on a higher dose. For most people in that anywhere from 10 to 50 pound weight, the lower doses are going to work okay for them. They're probably going to get what they need. And also going up on the dose because you're in a plateau, unless your hunger is the problem and you're eating more, like unless that's the problem, going up on the dose is not going to cause more fat loss. It's not directly causing fat loss. It's the habit matrix setting the conditions for the fat loss. And so if you're in that state and weight's not coming off, but you're not excessively hungry, you're not increasing your eating, all that's stable, increasing the peptide is not the direction. It's increasing metabolic rate through fitness, re-examining stress and sleep and these other things.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Dr. Gus Vickery, where do people find you?
They can find our practice in Asheville, North Carolina at www.authentichealth.com. And that website has a lot of resources around our protocols and coaching and what we offer. And then they can come to my individual site. It's actually probably not now as good as the Authentic Health site because we're trying to really make it this team idea, my colleagues, our health coaches. But that's www.drgusvickery.com, drgusvickery.com. And there's if you're wanting to interface with me on some level, there's a little portal or something, a form you can fill out. We do work with patients remotely. If we need to do real medical work and prescription work, then we're limited to where we have licenses, obviously, unless people are willing to travel. If they're willing to come to our clinic at least once during the year, then we have the ability to then do medical management, like prescribe for them and oversee and stuff if they're willing to make that trip. But we can also help people at least understand what protocols to use and where to get the resources and help them get gut and toxicant and micronutrient panels and lab panels, and work with potentially a health coach to implement or have a one-time or continuity review with a clinician to give them the protocols that they would want to use to fix what we see. So people are welcome to reach out to us if they're interested.
Love it. And I can vouch for this practice and for you, frankly, because I've sent a few people Dr. Vickery's way, and they've all been taken care of very well. So thank you for all the work that you do and for being willing to share all this information with people. I think, are there going to be resources that are downloadable
what
on
I'm
your
gonna
website as well?
What I'm gonna do, Natalie, is I realized when I looked at the one that's specific to the semaglutide or GLPs, I need to clean that up a little bit and update it. So I'm going to get that done. Once I get that completed, I'll forward you those new versions, and then you'll be able to make them available to the listeners.
Amazing. Well, the podcast won't be out for a little while, so you have lots of time.
Yeah.
And by the time this airs, I'm sure everything will be perfectly lined up and queued up and ready to go.
We'll be ready.
So thank you again. A pleasure as always. And we'll chat again soon.
Thank you, Natalie. And I'm sure we will chat again soon.